in my marriage and in my immigration to Canada. Both were arranged, but both had my consent. And I didn't know what to expect at both occasions. And at both occasions, or both of these life events, I had a period which we would refer to as the honeymoon. Really nice. You really enjoy every minute of it. And then, so to say, the boat starts to rock. You're like, who I am? Why am I in this relationship? And you feel like you really need to know, what is this relationship all about? And who are you in that relationship? So when I heard about the Leadership Waterloo region, and I joined the Leadership Waterloo region in 2005, I was at that moment in my marriage with Canada. The relationship with Leadership Waterloo region, attending the program, really provided me that grounding and that understanding of who I am in that relationship. And that's the best you could hope to achieve from a leadership program like this. You can learn skills, you can have experience, but knowing who you are is, I think, the core of leadership. And I'm so very grateful to the Leadership Waterloo region to give me that grounding, to give me that understanding of who I am in this new relationship. So, with this introduction of who I am, with the Leadership Waterloo region, I would want to remind you about the draws for the True North Conference and also a ticket for the, actually a couple of draws for True North Conference as well as Angie's Kitchen. We're very grateful for both prizes to be here. Make sure you enter and make sure you enter twice. Okay, first, with the little ticket that you got at the registration table, and the second one is even the best. What if you can refer a future leader to the Leadership Waterloo Region program, and at the same time, you also get the right to put your name for the draw for these two great prizes. So please don't forget both. And if you're active on social media, we would love you to tweet or Facebook, Instagram, whatever you like. Just don't forget the hashtag, which is LWR Breakfast, hashtag LWR Breakfast. Just incorporate it in your post, in your tweets. And now I would like to invite Kathy Must, Leadership Waterloo Region Board member, up to the stage for the land acknowledgement.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We honor their stewardship, past, present, and future. We recognize that this land has been inhabited for over 15,000 years, and that we share this territory through a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And as leaders, to forge real understanding and to challenge the legacies of colonialism.
Thank you, Kathy. This is a good reminder for all of us, time to take a little bit of a moment of silence and think about our role as settlers on this land. Next, I would like to invite Paul Rabb, who is the chair of the Leadership Waterloo Regions Board, to say a few words.
Thank you, and good morning. I want to thank everybody for coming this morning. We're very appreciative of your time and very thankful that you took time to meet with us this morning. I think you'll be very excited by the time you leave with the information that we have to share with you this morning. First of all, I'd like to thank and recognize my colleagues at the board level, Jason Butcher, Jason Butcher, Angelique Gray, Gloria Ringwood, David Baudouin, Patrick McKean, and Linda Rodriguez and Kathy Must for their efforts in our organization. I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank staff for their tremendous efforts, be Jane, Bethan, and Diane. This is an important time for our organization. Approximately 2 years ago, staff and board took a moment to pause and reflect on our position in the community, our history, and where we might want to go into the future. With the generous support of a grant from the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation, we were able to hire consultant Randy Sod to aid us with that process. He conducted many surveys and interviews with our supporters and our stakeholders in the community. As a result of that feedback, we've created a new vision for our organization, 4 pillars upon which we're built. Relationship building, collaboration, community readiness, and community understanding. We believe that those are our guiding principles moving forward and upon which our organization is built. So I apologize for the delay. I was just waiting for the next slide. I want to take a moment to thank a number of public officials who are with us this morning: Mayor Les Armstrong, Mayor Sue Foxton, Mayor Dave Jaworski, and attending on behalf of the City of Kitchener, Acting Mayor Debbie Chapman. From Regional Council, Councillor Helen Jowett, Councillor Tom Galloway. And a special welcome to Leadership Waterloo Region alumnus, Chief Brian Larkin. As I mentioned briefly before, our 4 pillars of community understanding, relationship building, and collaborative leadership, as well as community readiness, are our guiding principles now and moving forward. But I would also like to say that, in addition to that, we recognize that Leadership Waterloo Region is not an island to itself, that we don't own leadership, that we don't own community, that we play a part in community, that we value and love our community. But in order to truly achieve our goals, to make Leadership Waterloo Region a truly amazing organization, we need to partner with all of you, we need to partner with the community, and we need to work in a collaborative fashion. Gentlemen, could I have the next slide for the additional thank yous, please? Thank you. I'd also like to thank some of our sponsors: Home Hardware, Enbridge, Clark, Stark, Deagle, and Enbridge. Also like to thank our event partners: Bingamans, Sound Events, the Clemmer Group, Respecting the Process, Hacienda Saria, Sherwood Digital, Jackie Laurer, True North, powered by Communitech, and Barn Raising Associates. And last but certainly not least, our friends in the media: Waterloo Region Record and Rogers Radio Group, Chime FM, Country 106, and 570 News. I understand and appreciate at these types of events it's customary and necessary to thank our event sponsors and our title sponsors. I do so humbly and graciously. I will also admit to you that I simply don't have the time to thank everyone who has supported our organization in the past and in the present, but I can tell you on behalf of staff and the board, we are deeply and truly thankful for your support. And the reality is we simply don't have time to thank everybody this morning, but we are deeply grateful for your support. Last but not least, as part of our strategic review, we discovered a new opportunity to collaborate in the community, to re-envision our organization, and to create a bold new future. We're going to be telling you more about this morning. We're going to be telling you more about that this morning as the event unfolds, but for now, I'm going to introduce Jim Poling, Editor-in-Chief of the Waterloo Region Record. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for listening to me for a couple minutes. It truly will be a couple minutes. I think a couple weeks ago I promised Jerry at Rotary I would speak for 15 minutes, and 35 minutes later I was almost getting the hook. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of the Waterloo Region Record, and I'd like to thank Leadership Waterloo Region for partnering with the Record. It's a deep relationship. It's a relationship the paper values, and it's a relationship that I personally value. And it truly helps us navigate, the various landscapes that we all have to navigate. This morning's program is all about leadership and values, and I thought I might share one small vignette about change and growth that will help set the table. When I speak to people about working in the newspaper industry and about working in media, too often people bow their head and offer condolences. Sympathies are not necessary. Empathy, maybe. For the story of news and transformation is one about constant change and constant growth, and that fits nicely with the theme here today. So consider this, the first daily bilingual paper in this country was printed right here in Kitchener, Waterloo, more than 140 years ago. It was a 4-page paper, it was a 4-page daily. 3 pages were in English, 1 page was in German. The paper later became the Record. At the time of that paper, its mandate was local. People wanted local news, and the information arrived via telegraphs, a series of network cables strung from coast to coast. Local news meant news from home. Home was news from Germany, England, other parts of Europe, France, Italy. Today, our customers also demand local news. That is our franchise. But local news now means stories about people's downtowns, their city halls, their street, their park down the school, or the rubber towns, the history of toxic legacy and the effect it's had on people's lives and their neighbors and their friends and their spouses. And instead of telegraph, that local news now is delivered wirelessly to people's pockets at their tables. I'd be surprised if there's somebody in the room that doesn't have a device that carries their local news. So I use that as an example to talk about change and growth, and they're two very big pieces, but more than anything, change and growth are about leadership and perspective. And that local news, I can't think of a better metaphor for how we see what's local. Thank you very much for your time. I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Leadership Waterloo Region, for having me, for your insight. Enjoy your morning. This is a wonderful program, and I know you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Jim for his comments. I honestly can't think of an industry that has more change in it than media. Whether you're looking at daily news, because you can't print the old stuff, or if you're looking at the evolution of how we're receiving that news. Thank you, Jim, for your thoughts. I also want to recognize Mayor Catherine McGarry from the city of Cambridge. Is she with us today? There she is. Thank you for coming today. Many thanks. So my name is Diane Wiles, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here today. This is my first leadership breakfast in this role, but I'm an alumnus of 2002, so I've been around for a little bit, for a while with Leadership Waterloo Region. So I know we're anxious to get into our program and to hear Jim Clemmer, who will be speaking about change, but the topic of change really resonates with our organization at the moment. Now, we're going to take a moment to share announcements. There's a lot I want to share with you today, but I'm not going to do it just yet. Like Paul, I'm filled with gratitude. When I was preparing my remarks for this morning, I felt overwhelmed and humbled by the amount of support Leadership Waterloo Region has received over the years. Please bear with me while we just recognize a few people. Can you change the slide, please? Thank you. If you're an alumnus of the program, can you please stand and be recognized? Wow. The group around us are leaders in our community, and they are our legacy. Can I ask the current class of 2019 to please stand? We are, look at this, look at this. After the event, please take a moment to meet these people and say hello. You're going to want to know their names. I could see all the people not-for-profits going, okay, let's seek them out. I also want to thank all of our volunteers. We really couldn't do this without volunteers. Can you stand if you're on the board of directors, alumni council, gala committee, selection committee, if you're a facilitator or an instructor in our program, or if you assist me with fundraising calls? Can I have all of our volunteers please stand? Your time, energy, work, and passion are really helping to make Waterloo Region a better place for us to live, work, and play. I also want to thank our friends in Rotary. We have many Rotarians here today. Our friends at the Regional Municipality of Waterloo, our donors, sponsors, the social profits, institutions, governments, and corporations that put their staff through the program. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank a very special group of people, our friends here at Binghamans. Where are Danielle and Spiro? Thank you so much. Your friendship and support for all of our events just makes this possible. Thank you. Last but not least, well, not completely last, as we enter our 20th year, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the individuals and organizations that helped bring Leadership Waterloo Region into being, many of whom are in the room today, which I think is very special. Can I ask you to stand if you're representing that organization or if you're in the room? Karen Voisin, KW Community Foundation, Ann Lavender, the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Rosemary Smith, the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, and David Graham. And I'd also like to remember the late Chuck Greb and Terry Wichman, who sadly passed away late last year. Thank you. One last one is the team at Leadership Waterloo Region. We have Deb Ritchie, Bethan Llewellyn, Jane Kay, and we're really fortunate to have a volunteer from Conestoga College, Sydney Collette. This is a team, we're new together, we're gelling, we're all on the same page, and they work with passion tirelessly to get everything done. So thank you for your dedication. You're at the back. Next slide, please. So I have a lot of announcements, and I promise this is the most you'll ever hear me talk at an event, but we do have some exciting news to share. As Paul had talked about, in 2017, the board took time to pause, to discover what our future could look like and how we could make a greater impact on the community. And through the grant received generously from KW Community Foundation, Randy Sad, who's over here, was hired from Refocus Sustainability to conduct an evolution, as we like to call it. Over 50 constituents were surveyed. The findings were that Leadership Waterloo Region had the potential to make a greater impact on this community. We could engage more community partners, we could grow the class size, we could further engage our alumni, and build the program content. Sound good? We heard you. We heard the message loud and clear. So we asked ourselves, what can we do to strengthen this program and elevate the level of training, program development, and project delivery? How can we engage the 430 plus, it's a lot of alumni, how can we engage them in the program to have a more significant impact on this community? How can we increase recruitment and accommodate a larger class size? Because we need to really step up and help fill that leadership gap that still exists. What is our why? And should we rebrand? And how do we engage our new graduates and alumni in the community? How do we collaborate with 500 plus constituents, so our alumni, our class, current and key stakeholders, to take on real issues in this community, impact multiple social profits, and build new partnerships? And how can we be seen as that collaborative community partner that's a resource for all leadership in this community? How can we build a bold new vision? Well, we needed to change. I love this slide because it's so true. The first thing we looked at was our brand. A brand is more than your logo or icon. Your brand is how you want your community to see you, to know your values, how you conduct business, what's your reputation, and what do you stand for? That's what a brand is. Following much research, board discussions, staff retreats, program evaluations, I'm getting tired reading this, visioning and strategy, we knew we needed expert advice to move forward and to give us the look and feel we needed for our bold new vision. We then had the pleasure of meeting with Barn Raising Associates, the godfather of disruption, Alan Corey, and Victoria Ford, a master visionary and storyteller. Led by our manager of brand communication and community engagement, Beth and Llewellyn, who really did all the heavy lifting, we shared our why. I'm excited to share with you this morning our new mission. It's why and the guiding force behind everything we do. We're going to build a continuum of leaders committed to Waterloo Region's excellence through community understanding, relationship building, collaborative leadership, and community readiness. Thanks to Alan and Victoria, who were able to give this vision life and take it to new heights. They created a tangible representation of our values and our reason for being. Are you ready to see our new brand? Okay, this is where I get excited. This is our new logo. You'll see it roll out in the community over the next few weeks, and you'll see it roll out on a new website very shortly. But I'm really happy to share this sneak peek with you this morning. The design is inspired by the mind's ability to shift perspective. Depending on how you view this geometric element, you see a cube in two different orientations, or an infinite loop of triangles which all lead into a core center of understanding. Does this sound like us, where we're going? The themes of continuum, strength, connectedness, and unity, and how these work together to rise as a whole, were top of mind during the design process. Leadership Waterloo Region promises to encourage, empower, and equip a generation of emerging leaders and rising decision makers through impactful, practical, experiential, and community-focused leadership training. We want all of you to rise with us in the next chapter of our journey. I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to Alan Quarry and Victoria Ford. Can you please stand? You're both experts at navigating choppy waters, and I thank you for your expertise, friendship, expediency, and ability to make the entire process so very rewarding. Thank you. Whew, there's one announcement. We have a couple more, though. So the Community Leadership Program is at the core of what we do. And we call it the core program for that reason. It's designed to achieve our main objective, to ignite rising leaders to make positive change in Waterloo Region. How do we do that? Well, we already talked. We encourage, empower, enable, equip. Each September, Leadership Waterloo Region offers a core program which runs over a 10-month period. It's targeted to professionals in 3 key groups: social profit, government, and business. And through a series of focused and connected workshops and project work, participants learn more about their own leadership styles, our community systems, and identify the skills they need or wish to hone. The biggest change I'm going to announce for our upcoming class involves the approach we will take in the project route. So in previous years, the class has been split into smaller work groups to work on smaller community projects within several social profits. Not all the projects were equal, not were all the same time commitment, level of experience, skills, or the level of supervision. To address some of these challenges, Leadership Waterloo Region will be working with the Waterloo Institute of Social Innovation and Resilience, housed at the University of Waterloo. Social innovation labs like WISER are processes that allow stakeholders with many different perspectives to generate innovative solutions for complex social and ecological changes. They are a powerful tool for developing and collecting capacity to generate and scale innovation, laying the groundwork for systemic change. Does that sound exciting so far? However, it's not a magic bullet solution for our wicked problems this community faces. Instead, a social innovation lab is an important step towards continually generating, scaling, and evaluating new solutions. Do you want another announcement? Thank you. I'm also excited to share that through our partnership with WISER, we'll be working with Wellbeing Waterloo Region. For those of you who don't know, Wellbeing Waterloo Region is a community collaborative to improve the well-being of Waterloo Region. Community well-being is shaped by, and talk about your experience so that we can have other people want to join the program. And don't forget on the tables the referral cards. If you think of somebody that would be great in this program, I will personally follow up with them. Plus, you'll be entered in a draw for True North. And we can't do this alone again without funding. We're looking for stakeholders to invest in this new vision. We can't cross the finish line without having more people buy in, and we want to build that continuum of leaders together. And we do have that vision that one day there'll be skilled leaders waiting in the wings to take on leadership roles in our community within the systems and the organizations that deal with governance, social justice initiatives, and our social determinants of health. And quick reminder, we'll be holding an information session in Phillip Room B at 9:15. Deb Ritchie at the back will be holding that. So if you have any burning questions about the program, she should be able to answer them. And just take a moment now to thank, did you notice he had some goodies on your table? Am I the only one who loves goodies on the table? It's quite fun, isn't it? So I'd like to thank our friends at Hacienda Saria for the freshly, locally roasted coffee that, you should smell my car. I've had it in my car, so it's amazing. So those are local coffee beans, as well as I'd really like to thank Angie's Kitchen for the gift certificate, and Jim Clemmer, thank you so much for gifting people leadership books they can use on the next step of their leadership journey. And thank you, Barn Raising and Associates, for the pens. Now, we're just going to, before we flip to the next slide, we have a little video for you so you don't have to listen to me anymore. And I want to thank the folks that respect the process at the back. Want to give a wave? Adam Rochon, Brandon Nguyen, and Joseph Fung put together a video that addresses many of the aspects of Leadership Waterloo Region. And I think you'll recognize some of the superstars in the video because they're in our audience today. But I'd also like to thank all the participants who agreed to be interviewed. Okay, you can start the video, Mike. Thank you.
And it's also great for the social services and addressing the social needs that we have.
Wow, thank you so much. Respecting the process. Respect the process. Now you don't have to listen to me anymore. I have the pleasure of introducing Jim Clemmer. Jim has a lifelong passion for personal, team, and organizational development. His research, writing, workshop, retreat facilitation, and keynote presentations focus on inspire action, practical approaches proven to move leaders from inspiration to implementation. Jim's 7 internationally best-selling books, blogs, columns, and newsletters have helped hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. Jim has delivered over 1,500 keynotes, workshops, and retreats. One was on a cruise ship, he told me. To avoid marinating in his own seasoning, Jim constantly writing, updating, researching, and expanding his material and approaches. Besides lots of war stories and a few battle scars, he's developed a big toolkit of development exercises, assessments, learning methods, strategic frameworks, and implementation processes. Among his many achievements, he's especially proud of tripling the size of his forehead. I'd also like to add that Jim Clemmer has graciously come on board to do strategic work with our Board of Governors, and will be facilitating our retreat, and also working with our program committee to help us bring some of our programming up to match the caliber of Wiser. This morning, Jim brings to you practical and proven approaches illustrated with entertaining examples supported by solid research. Please join me in welcoming Jim to the stage.
Okay, thank you, Diane. All right, even I'm looking forward to what I have to say now. Oh, thanks, Diane. I'm delighted to be supporting the excellent work of Waterloo Region, and we've raised our family here. All of our kids and now grandkids live in the area, and love this community, and love to see us trying to figure out how to become an even better community and how to deal with change, which I know a few of us are dealing with. In fact, years ago, I was in a meeting with a group of my colleagues, and I caught myself saying, well, once we get through this crazy period and things settle down, you ever catch yourself in one of those kinds of conversations? Once that new structure is in place, or the restructuring is done, or the new program, or whatever is installed, or we get that position filled, and then things settle down, right? No. And that was kind of where the light bulbs went on for me, and I caught myself and I said, seems to me that we've been saying that an awful lot lately. Maybe what I've got to get my head around, or we've got to get our head around, is that this crazy period is life, is not going to change. If anything, has sped up over the last couple of years. And so it wasn't too long after that I came across a comment from Warren Bennis, who's been one of my favorite writers, researchers, authors on leadership over the years. He said some very nice things about one of my books, so the man's clearly brilliant, and I quote him even more. But here's what he said back then. He said, I can't recall a period of time that was volatile, complex, ambiguous, and tumultuous. And he quoted one CEO of the day as saying, if you're not confused, you don't know what's going on. How many of you know what's going on? I think a few of us know what's going on. Gene Kerr was an American playwright who said, if you can keep your head when everybody else around you is losing theirs, it's just possible you haven't grasped the situation. One of the possibilities. So, in a very short period of time here, I want to take you on a very quick city tour. My wife Heather and I love to travel, and we don't do a lot of pre-planning. We go to a new city, we kind of take the city tour first, and then decide where we might want to spend some more time. So this topic of leadership, of course, is enormous and covers all kinds of ground. And in a short period of time here, we'll talk briefly about the need for speed and agility today, touch on the three critical choices that I think are at the foundation of effective personal and team and organizational leadership, and then look a bit at what's some of the shifting that we see most clearly between good managers and great leaders. And I'll show you some of the research behind that. And lastly, build leadership strengths. So about should have this finished by about noon, right? Isn't that? No, okay. Well, we're going to take a very quick whirlwind tour across some of this. And I will offer at the end, and so you don't have to sit there furiously trying to maybe take some notes, that if you'd like a copy of my slides, because I'll kind of zip along with some of this, then just give me your business card, or I'll show you my email address, or send me an invite on LinkedIn or something, and we'll get those to you, along with some other linkages and other materials that I'll be alluding to. Well, in Harvard Business Review, there was an article a little while ago that appeared called, and this is the exact title with the permanent in brackets as they showed it, saying there's really three key things needed. Faster adaptation, a need for more speed, embracing disequilibrium and finding that elusive balance point between stability and change, and generating leadership, especially across the organization. We have a room full of leaders here at very senior levels, many of you in your organizations. So how do we build that leadership all across the organization? And kind of on that note, I came across recently a study that I've been following for years, the work by Great Place to Work, who's been working with Fortune magazine for the last 20 years and have been looking at what are some of the greatest places to work and what's the impact on profitability. Most of them are profit organizations, and so on. And recently, they published this study about innovation for all. And what it was really speaking to was the need for high-quality ideas, greater speed, greater agility, and they found that organizations that have that have 5.5 times the revenue growth of other organizations that didn't have that kind of speed, that kind of agility. And what really stood out for me was kind of this last line, because it's certainly consistent with my experience, is that many, many organizations are not fully tapping the potential of everyone in their organization. And so that really leads me to this point that for us, leadership is not so much the position or role that we're in, it's the action or activities we take. Does that make sense for you? That it's what we do, not who we are, that defines whether we're leaders or not. Which means that you can have people in leadership roles who are not great leaders. They're managers, they're bureaucrats, they're technicians, they're even snoopervisors, but they aren't great leaders. And then you can have people who are not in leadership roles, appointed roles, who are outstanding leaders, who initiate, who make things happen, who communicate, who connect, who don't just sit there and wait for something to be done, but say, I'm going to do something. And so that's how we tend to define leadership, that it's that taking action, making things happen, regardless of the role that we're in. So would you agree that what we need then is a culture of that, an organization full of that we need leaderful organizations, those who are willing to step up and take more of that kind of initiative. So, assuming that you agree with that, everyone agree with that? That makes sense. So just nod, shake your head, breathe, let me know that you're awake. Okay. So then we come back to, of course, almost everything traces itself back ultimately to Drucker, and so much of his pioneering work, often thought of as the father of modern management. But he says we all want to know how to make other people effective, and of course that's a big part of what leadership is. But what he argues is what we need to do is first start with how can I make myself effective, leading from the inside out. Leadership is an inside job. Make sense? That we can't really lead others to places we're not going ourselves. That starts with leading ourselves. So that's where I want to briefly touch on 3 critical choices then that we have as individuals, as leaders, that especially when the you-know-what hits the fan. I live in the south end of Kitchener, the Pioneer Park area, Lower Doon, and the plaza nearby is Pioneer Plaza. And I was over there a while back, and I ran into somebody I hadn't seen for a while, and I said, "Hey, Phil, how's it going?" He said, "Same crap, different day." How do you argue with that? Phil's one of these guys that's walking around with his crap glasses on, looking for everything that's wrong, as if maybe there's going to be some kind of reward for that. A psychologist friend of mine calls it rectal optimitis, which is just looking for that bad stuff in life, just looking for all that crap. And so one of my more recent books, actually Susan Chilton was the editor of it, and Susan and I kind of played around with this idea of crap glasses and playing with this notion of CRAP, can't readily absorb positivity. It's kind of what we played around with. And looking at this idea that sometimes we can be, depends a lot on what we're looking for, basically. So since I love your logo. That's a great logo within. When you pointed out the optical illusion, and that's really cool. I like that. And so it got me thinking about these couple of optical illusions as well. That what do you see? Sorry, these 2 dots are exactly the same size, but they look different. Why? How they're surrounded, how they're framed. Or here we have, what do we have here? A rabbit and a duck? So which one is it really? Is it a rabbit or is it a duck? No, it's both. Depends which way you're looking. The duck's looking off towards actually this direction, and the rabbit is looking in the other direction. So which one is it? Well, it depends a lot on what we look for. Or here's one last little bit of fun with this idea. What do you read in this sentence, this phrase? Opportunity is now here, or opportunity is nowhere. So opportunity is nowhere, opportunity is now here. Which is it? Which is it really? Well, of course, it depends on what it is that we're looking for. Now, these are pretty ancient ideas in many ways. That's why I often call them timeless principles. One of the books you have talks about timeless principles. And Shakespeare said there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So we rarely see the world as it is. And the more we look at consciousness and reality and all the research that's going on, the more we realize that there really is no objective reality as such. In fact, even the research in quantum physics is showing that the observer changed the outcome by observing. So what is reality? Well, we see the world as we are, not as it is. So my old buddy Phil sees the world as full of lots of crap and lots of problems. And so a lot of research, especially at the University of Pennsylvania, Martin Seligman, been a long-time follower of his work, does some really excellent, vigorous clinical trials and work in the field of psychology. He actually pioneered the field of positive psychology. And this isn't his, but this is the sort of work that he's been doing. This is looking at the different ways that we can define pessimism, seeing the worst, the negative, the gloomiest, worst possible outcomes, tending towards evil. Well, that's one view of reality. Here's the opposite. We're living in the best of all worlds, that we can be the most hopeful. The universe is improving. Good will triumph over evil. Which one is it really? What's reality? Trick question. What's reality? This is the participative part. Somewhere in the middle? Anybody else? Sorry? There, gray area in between? Perspective, wherever we want. Yeah, we can go to one end or the other, in between, whatever it is that we want. The world is exactly like that. So movie producers, or movie directors will frame the shot to create a mood, to create a focus, and to make whatever point might be of the scene. Well, what framing level becomes really critical for us as leaders, for personally and for leading others. So this framework says, well, in the middle is where we're following. So we're waiting and seeing what happens, where's this going, is this going to go somewhere positive? So I might be on the hopeful side. Give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm not quite sure where it's going to go, but we'll see what happens. Or I might be on the hopeless side. Oh, here we go again. More of this kind of crap. Every time I turn around, I've got to deal with more of this stuff. And when the you-know-what hits the fan, I'm standing in it all the time. So where is it that we focus? Do we end up like poor old General Sedgwick, who's a casualty of the U.S. Civil War? He's buried in Arlington Cemetery. These were his last words. They couldn't hit an elephant from this distance. And those were his last words. In fact, the West Point Academy that teaches military leaders in the U.S. leadership has this statue. This is him, a statue to him, out front to remind everyone of change and how things change and how we can get a little bit too certain and sure of ourselves and a little too focused on what may or may not be happening. So we are in the middle, and you can kind of think of this as a bell curve. So many of us are pretty comfortable in the middle when we're dealing with difficult change. When the shift hits the plan, we can be stuck in the middle here, or in the middle. But as we look at, I've drawn a set of stairs to say it often takes effort. It's work for many of us to move up into more of the leading, more optimistic kind of position, where we're trying to look at how can we take this tough, difficult, maybe major setback and make the best of it, try to figure out how to turn that around. It's so much easier to slide down into the wallowing territory, where, here we go again. For example, there's lots of conspiracy theories down in wallowing territory. They're out to get us. They were up till 2 o'clock last night just trying to figure out how to make our lives miserable. There's lots of they kind of thinking that can lead us into pity city. Riding on the good old bitter bus. Someone in a group told me that there's a more upscale version of the BMW bus, the bitch, moan, and whine bus. It's a similar kind of idea, where we're driving down Helpless Highway through Frown Town, Victim Valley, past Dead End Place, Pessimism Drive, all the way into Pity City. Our family would warn you, those are a few dad jokes that kind of slipped in there. Our daughter once gave me a Christmas card that said, "Dad, this Christmas I'm going to do something really special for you." You open it up and said, "I'm going to laugh at one of your jokes." But I don't think she actually did do that. So there's no hope, there's no way, forget about it, we may as well just give up. Why bother? And this has been Seligman and his work on learned helplessness, which his work in the early part of his career was around depression and deep levels of anxiety, was that we fall into these traps of helplessness and giving up. So I want to show you a little 2-minute video that was came out of a contest. The American Association for Retired People ran a number of years ago with groups of 20-year-olds. And they were asking them to project in 30 years from now, when you're 50, so you at 50, what do you see for yourself and for the world? So here's one of the winning entries. Pretty powerful. So, which is reality? Which is it? One we choose, absolutely. So, when the shift hits your plan, because of course nothing ever quite goes according to plan. I think it was John Lennon famously said that life is what happens when you're making other plans. And so when it happens, the big question is, how do you keep yourself in leading mode? You may need occasional visit to Pity City, you may even a little bit of therapeutic venting, but how do we keep ourselves back up into leading mode? I would highly recommend for strategies along those lines that you Google Martin Seligman or go to his website, AuthenticHappiness.org, or Google Positive Psychology, and there's a major movement underway now that is looking at how we can do this very kind of thing, reframe, refocus, reshift when we're running into really difficult kinds of setbacks, problems, challenges, etc. That it is a choice, that the framework we use, the glasses we put on, is a choice. But sometimes it's a very difficult one. Sometimes it's a very challenging one. Sometimes we need counseling or coaching or help to refocus and get back into that more positive frame of mind. And then, of course, leadership is about how you help your colleagues do the same. One of the hallmarks throughout the ages of highly effective leaders is they make people feel hopeful. They make people see possibilities. They help to inspire what could be and don't get too caught up in what is, but how can we help people move to what could be and that sense of vision. So that's a quick look at I think, one of the foundation pieces of leadership, And I'll leave you with this section with the words of Daniel Boone, as you kind of sit back and think about, well, where am I spending more of my time? Am I above or below that line? Daniel Boone said he was never lost. Great frontiersman, woodsman, never lost. He was bewildered once for 3 days, but never lost. Of course, being a real he-man, he never asked for directions either, so that didn't help much. So let's briefly talk about leadership. Now, in this section, I'm going to quickly go through some material, just kind of give you an overall impression. You're not going to get all the detail, but again, I'm happy to send you these slides, and you can look at this in a little more depth. So coming back to the Innovation by All study, and you can see the magnitude of it there, 500,000 employees, almost 800 companies. And what they found was that the fastest, most nimble organizations have a ratio of 11 to 2. That is 11 people pulling the organization forward for every 2 dragging them back. Of course, there will always be some of those. We all have them in organizations, the naysayers, the abominable no man that was constantly trying to, yeah, see, that's some dad jokes again sneaking in there. But we all have those. So what they found was that functional or more average organizations have a ratio of around 5 to 2, and dysfunctional or the worst performing have a ratio of around 3 to 2, which I guess is still slightly hopeful. I once asked a manager in an organization as we were starting to do some work there, how many people work here? And he said, oh, about half. And as we did the work and did the culture work, he was probably a bit on the optimistic side. It's actually fewer than that. What is good management? Well, lots of different ways we can define it. This is a very partial list, a few examples of what good managers do. They direct, they control, they give feedback, they focus on improvement, they use technical expertise, all good stuff. What do great leaders do? And we have lots of research. I'm going to show you briefly a bit of it to show that great leaders move even much further towards inspiring, coaching, developing, giving and asking for feedback, energizing, making people hopeful with vision, strategy, etc. Again, these are partial lists, but they give overall themes of good management versus great leadership. And another way that I've tended to look at this over the years, and the Moose on the Table book that you have has a little more discussion. It's my only work of fiction, which maybe once you read it, you think, good, don't ever do that again. But hopefully you'll enjoy the story of Pete Leonard and how he tries to wrestle a bit with some of these concepts. So Performance Triangle says we need to balance the technical side with management with the people side, the leadership side, or the hands, the head, and the heart is the very difficult balance. And so sometimes we break that down a bit more to say, well, management is all about the head stuff, thinking, planning, analysis, logic, good IQ sort of ability, whereas leadership is all about the heart stuff, the soft, so-called soft skills. And Diane mentioned in the program, we talk about emotional intelligence, and of course that's a very key element of what we've known now for some 20 years of research that leadership is all about. So let's just take a quick look at some of the research over the last 7 years now. We've been working with Zenger Folkman, an old colleague of mine, Jack Zenger, and I reconnected back in 2012, and I'm about to show you some slides of 360 data. In fact, we have right here in Waterloo region. The police have had about 100 people go through this process. Wilfrid Laurier University is about 200 people. So some of that data is in this big database, but it's now over 100,000 leaders that have been assessed by over 1 million people. And it's looking at the correlations. In this case, it's the correlation between leadership effectiveness across the bottom axis, which is usually about 12 people assessing the leader's effectiveness. That's sort of the average. Across the other axis, then, is thinking about quitting. And we know that people who score high on thinking about quitting on this survey, that within 18 months, 50% of them do quit. And so we see, maybe to nobody's great surprise, a great difference between very bad leadership, poor leadership, which is at the left end of the spectrum, and very good leadership. Thinking about quitting is very, very low at the high end of the spectrum here. And so we put an iceberg in front of that to say, well, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, because many people quit and leave, but the bigger problem is people who what? Quit and stay. On-the-job retirement. And in fact, what we find time and again, we find in our work, studies like this show that 70 to 80% of the reason people quit and leave or quit and stay is because of their immediate manager. And so we know that engagement, for example, which is a big goal many organizations have, is highly dependent on the immediate boss. That poor leaders have very, very low levels of engagement, whereas great leaders have much higher levels of engagement. So we see that shown across this trend here. Or extra effort, discretionary effort. Is this a place where people want to go the extra mile? Again, we see, look at that last bar. It's outstanding leadership, showing much, much higher levels of discretionary effort. So as you sit back and look at this and think about, so where am I putting my focus? Where are we as a team putting our focus? On technical management or leadership, what do we need to shift? How do we move towards much higher levels of leadership? Every time I use this chart, which I use in a lot of retreats and sessions and workshops, I ask people to assess where they spend their time now, where they think they'd like to be spending their time. Always, leadership comes up as I need to spend a lot more time in leadership. Well, what gets in the way? Well, I get sucked down into many of the management areas. So let me just wrap up then with a very quick word about building leadership strengths. This, I think, is one of the more exciting, newer areas of leadership over the last 15 to 20, well, 10 to 15 years, really. And it's really where the work with Zenger-Folkman has come into the fore. Because to a large extent, we're focused on improvement as being fixing weaknesses. And some organizations, making a mistake is like cutting yourself in front of Dracula. Well, it's a very dangerous thing to do. And so we want to focus much more on building strengths. And what the research shows is that when a leader is focused on building strengths, the leader versus fixing weaknesses, that they have double the impact when they're reassessed 18 to 24 months later by the same sort of 360 process. So we know that building strengths can double the impact. Well, I'm about to get the hook here, so I'm going to wrap up by, with saying that I hope you find the books that we've donated here are useful, and I'm happy to, hope you find them worth much more than you paid for them. I'm happy to provide an autograph or a signature, which someone said, well, when you die, they'll really be that much more valuable. That's not a good marketing plan. I don't think that one. We have worked as well with Leadership Waterloo Region to have them co-sponsor or sponsor with us a couple of workshops coming up in Mississauga in June, and you can find more about that on our website. Or as I offered earlier, if you want to give me your card or send me an email, I'll be happy to send you a copy of the slides, links to more information on what I've touched on here very briefly, and if you're interested in those workshops as well, a discount code for those. So, last thing I'll leave with you is I grew up on a dairy farm just over the line in Perth County near Newton, Millbank, Milverton area. Some people here even know where that is. When I travel, lots of people don't know where that is, but when I say, hey, you've got a well-traveled group, it's clearly where that is. So growing up on a dairy farm, I love this quote from Albert Hubbard, which I think speaks to a big part of what leadership is as well. Lead, follow, wallow, taking initiative, making things happen. He said, people who want milk should not seat themselves in the middle of the field in the hope that a cow will back up to them. So happy milking.
What can I say? Thank taking my CRAP morning, just turning it into more of an inspiration and hope-filled. Thank you so very much. And I just want to say this is the closest that I've come to pronouncing that CRAP word, especially in public, probably in private too. Well, this is the joy of learning English in a classroom setting. Before I come to they've made all their efforts of making sure that our vocabulary is only limited to the things that we can say publicly. So, I want to say what an inspirational keynote that we just heard. And when I try to reflect on it, the thing that really stuck with me is this idea that Diane was talking about earlier, about these wicked problems that we have. I wouldn't call them necessarily wicked, part of my English learning in the classroom setting, but yes. These big, complex problems that we have, and we have them more as like, a consistent sore in our communities, but we have the context which is continuously shifting and changing. So the context is shifting and changing. We still have the homelessness, we still have social exclusion, we still have marginalization in our community, we're still trying to see where we are, we're still trying to make efforts to do reconciliation and a lot of other things. So what do we do to actually really be prepared as a community for this challenge that we have? We have the problems that seem to be consistent, we have the context which is constantly shifting and changing. And I think Leadership Waterloo Region is filling the gap by producing, by inspiring a new generation of leaders, by producing a continuum of leaders throughout. Like imagine thinking about 20 years, almost 20 years of preparing people to take leadership roles in this constantly shifting context. I think this is a great effort. This has made our community really more prepared to tackle challenges like especially chronic homelessness. And I'm very, very glad to see that Leadership Waterloo Region will be working very closely with some of the great minds in our community to help find solutions for that problem. So with that, I understand that there is a little bit of delay in collecting your referral cards from the table. So if you have referral cards on your table, if you can just raise your hands, then they will come and collect. I'm ready for one of the very, very exciting part of this morning, which is the draw of the prizes. Always exciting. I was looking for a referral card myself, and I couldn't get one, so I have lost my opportunity to win the ticket to the True North Conference and the breakfast. Well, we have 2 lucky winners in the room. So if your referral card is not still with you, make sure that they get it before we draw the 2 lucky winners. If I can invite Diane to be here on the stage with me to help with the draw. She was just here.
Did we not have the best MC this morning? Fazia was so eager, she was the very first person to register for the breakfast.
So, they told me this morning, and then Paul Rapp said, look, this is your reward that you get to MC when you get the first ticket. And I said, well, you didn't talk about the punishment. How about waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to be here at before 6:30?
Waking up at 5 shows leadership.
Great.
Okay. The first, we'll put it back in. So we need 1 card and 1 ticket. Are we ready? So for referrals, the first lucky attendee of True North is Adam Roshan. Okay, and I'll read the last 4 digits. The ticket number is 3500. Oh, excellent, congratulations. I also wanted to make sure you look at the beautiful BMW parked out front. They're our sponsors, Grand River BMW. They sponsor our gala every year. So we had them drop off a car so we could just look at it today. Isn't it beautiful? So please have a look when you go outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and congratulations to the winners. Enjoy the breakfast at Angie's and make sure that you go to True North after that. I would like to remind everyone that we have a core program session in Flip B room. It's starting at 9:15. And I would like to now close by thanking each one of you, every one of you, for taking the time to be here, to be with us at this important annual Leadership Waterloo Region breakfast. Happy leading, keep up the good work that everybody's doing in the community, and keep inspiring, keep doing the good work. Thank you.